It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Good afternoon. Scott Luton back with you on Supply Chain Now Live. We are not broadcasting on this episode from Atlanta, Georgia, the supply chain city. Actually, we're here in Las Vegas, Nevada, balmy Las Vegas, Nevada, 40 degrees and gales of 80 miles per hour it feels. But nevertheless, we're surrounded by incredible thought leaders from across the space, the reverse logistics and return space. That's really is the center of that universe here, the Reverse Logistics Association Conference and Expo. We've been covering a lot of the thought leaders that are here that are keynoting and leading panels or participating in panels or exhibiting. We're about halfway through our programming, and I always love when we feature return guests, which we're doing on this episode. So stay tuned, more to come on our guests here today, as well as our co-host, who has not chimed in yet, so stand by.
I'm throwing you off by doing that.
Yes, you are. But today's episode is brought to you by Recommerce. Recommerce Group Industries is an industry leader in returned product management, return center services, remanufacturing, reprocessing, repairing, and recycling of consumer products. All the re's, as we've been saying.
That's right.
You can learn more at recommercegroupinc.com. Quick programming note, like all of our podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts from. Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
YouTube,
wherever else you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. I'm always impressed with how you nail that line each time.
You know why? Because I leaned a little bit forward, looked past Trish, and saw YouTube on there.
Funny. All right, so as if he needs an introduction, I'm joined today by my fearless co-host, supply chain serial tech entrepreneur, a supply chain adjutant. That's one of my favorites. Chronic disruptor and trusted advisor, Greg White. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing great. I do have fears, though, I'd just like to say.
Really? What's your biggest?
I have no intention of sharing them, but I do have fears.
Just give me one.
Lost at sea. It's my greatest fear.
Really?
Yes.
Number one.
I hate those words more than anything. Lost at sea. Imagine drifting around knowing that your fate is already determined. And anyway.
How about snakes?
I hate snakes. Top
three.
I don't know if I'd call it a fear, but I hate snakes.
I'm a spider. Yeah, I'm not a fan
Is that
of
right?
spiders.
Oh, really?
No.
Yeah, we've got my youngest daughter is not a fan of spiders.
Really?
I know that if I hear Daddy at 11 o'clock at night, there's a spider in her. It's the only time she would ever talk to me at 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, we'll have to check out our new phobia series here on
Yes,
Supply
that's
Chain
right.
Now.
Well, hey, you asked for it, okay?
I usually do. Hey, but we've got a great episode teed up. As I mentioned, a repeat guest, Trish Boehm.
Beam. Yeah.
Man, there's like 11 ways to pronounce
I know.
it.
We'll
Say it again.
And it's Beam.
Beam.
And
okay.
my family alone pronounces it 11 different ways.
Really?
Is that right?
So if you go to one side of the family, it's Bame.
Yep.
Boom. I answer to pretty much anything.
Beam.
But it's Beam.
Shame on me to repeat guest. That should be my very
We should
first
just
thing to confirm.
stick to Trish. You should just change your name to like Madonna.
Oh, just
and just
the one.
go with Trish.
Yeah. It's funny. I always introduce myself with only Trish because I know if I give my last name, they're going to butcher it anyway.
Right.
Well, we are going to get it right.
If
and
they can say it, they can't spell it. And if they can't spell, or if they can't, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You can't
What
both
he
say it
said.
and spell it.
Yes.
Yeah. You can't even say you can say it.
So Trish Boehm, Director of Operations with the Home Depot.
Yep.
And Trish had joined us probably back mid-fall 2019. We talked a lot at the time. She appeared with Tony Sciarrotta with the RLA. We talked a lot about the really neat and successful things and approach that the Home Depot is taking when it comes to returns and reverse logistics. And, we've had the opportunity to tour one of their return centers, which, man, to put your eyes on what takes place, everyone, if you're in retail or in reverse logistics or supply chain or, for that matter, consumers should tour those places. They'd all come out with some big lessons learned. But Nevertheless, great to have you back. Trish, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I agree with you. The weather here is not what I was expecting.
It's crazy. Very unexpected. And so I was kidding with the 80-mile-per-hour gales.
They were only 60.
60.
They were 60.
But it has been 40 degrees.
Yes.
Who packed for that? But anyway, so Trish, let's do this. I want to re-familiarize for those that caught that earlier episode that we enjoyed so much. Let's let them know the Trish story a little bit, the Trish Boehm story a little bit. I'll say that 20 times. And I've got a last name, by the way, that everyone gets wrong, so I'm very used to that. I should pay more attention to making sure.
I say it different every time I talk to him.
That's true.
I was just going to take a stab at it.
Please.
Is it not Luton?
It's French. It's Luton.
Luton.
Yes.
But
I'm
he
kidding.
pronounces it.
I'm complete kid. It's English. We were named after Luton, England, is where our family hailed from.
Hey, that was pretty good how you turned the tables on him, and now you're interviewing him. That is hard to do, let me assure you.
Tell me about yourself.
Yeah. Where are you from? That's good. That is good. So
that's why she's a repeat guest.
That's right. Only the best. Only the best may come back for the second and beyond.
He'll get my last name by the third, maybe.
Yeah. We're just going to take out some letters until we figure it out.
There we go.
Yes. So, and if our listeners can't tell, I think we've got a lot of kindred spirits in this episode and plenty of fun. But we're also going to be celebrating some of the things that you and your team do and lead at the Home Depot that a lot of companies, including world-class companies, are struggling with. So, but for starters, before we get there, let's talk more about where you're born and raised, and let's get the skinny on your upbringing. And you were born in Indianapolis.
I was actually born in Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh.
Yes, but my dad traveled a lot for work. He was in transportation, and so we moved quite a bit. And when I was 6, we finally landed in Muncie, Indiana. Muncie. Technically a suburb of Muncie. I'm from Yorktown.
Okay.
That's the high school I went to.
I need a map.
One of my favorite transmissions built there.
Really?
4-speed, yeah, absolutely.
What does that transmission go into?
Mostly Camaros in the late 60s.
Very cool. But
not really. Not really. I can tell you're not interested. But thank you for saying so.
But I said Indianapolis because we know you're a big Colts fan.
Yes, I am a big Colts fan.
I'd forgotten Louisville first, and then Muncie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us about what else when you think of your childhood and your upbringing, some things you love to do, or early role models.
Sure.
What else sticks out, especially those that may have impacted your professional journey?
Yeah, I was a big sports fan. I have an older brother. The whole neighborhood was all boys, and so I grew up around a lot of males, and so we played all sorts of sports in the backyard, and who can hit it over the fence, baseball, all of that. But actually, my passion when I was growing up was volleyball. I loved playing volleyball. And so grew up playing volleyball, ended up when I went to college, I coached volleyball as well.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, I did a little bit of coaching, just, 12 and under, 14 and under, folks.
And where'd you go to school?
I went to Ball State University.
No way.
I did. Yeah. So when I was in senior in high school, I did the co-op program.
Okay.
And so where it's basically I went to school for a couple hours, and then in the afternoons I would go to work. And I didn't have a job at the time because our deal at the family was if you're in sports, right, you don't necessarily have to get a job.
Right.
So I had not even ever had a job, and so the school actually helped me and said, "What are you into?" And I was like, "I don't know. I like numbers." And so they got me a job doing accounts payable at Borg Warner, which is a manufacturer of transfer cases and transmissions. Yeah. Yep. So I did that, and then they offered me a job when I went to college, and so that's really why I stuck around Muncie even.
What? So
the Muncie 4-speed is, by the way, a Borg Warner transmission.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
A small world. So first off, the hard-hitting questions. What position on the volleyball? How does that work? Are you a spiker or a setter? How does that work?
I'm glad you even know those. Look at that. Yeah, I was
my middle daughter loves watching college volleyball when it comes on TV.
Or were you a libero?
libero.
Right. Oh, right. I'm thinking of the
English version.
Well,
yes.
I'm thinking of the sign.
You're right.
Libra.
Yes.
Libra. Were you a Libra?
The theme for the show.
Yeah, misspoken word.
Yeah.
The misspoken word.
Right. Yeah. I was a setter.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So I was a setter, and I loved it. And it taught me a lot about teammates and working well with others. And
Yeah.
Are the setters a captain?
Basic
quarterback kind of?
Yes.
Okay.
Run the plays, call the plays.
So naturally
The
that would
muscle
lead into coaching, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
you coach while you're at Ball State?
I did, yes.
Okay.
I coached at the local high school, the junior
Very
varsity
cool.
team.
Did they win?
We did pretty good.
Yeah.
But yes.
Indiana
It
basketball is
is.
a tough state for volleyball.
It is.
Really?
Yeah.
Specifically
Yes.
East Central Indiana.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Things you know. So you mentioned a co-op.
Yes.
And if I heard you correctly, and as always, correct me if I did not hear you correctly, that co-op seems like, to me, the bridge that got you into manufacturing, supply chain, kind of into what you're doing now a little bit, right?
Absolutely. I will tell you that gave me an edge for sure. And I had a lot going on in college. I mean, in order to just finish school in 4 years, and I was working full-time, I had to go to school every summer. It was a lot, and it taught me a lot. I didn't have a lot of free time. Not the normal college student stories that most folks did. But it taught me a lot. And when I graduated from college, I got an offer from J.B. Hunt right out of the gate.
That's right.
Yeah, to go work for them in the Chicagoland area. So right out of the gate, I 100%. That taught me a lot. I was pretty young, but I liked operations, and it helped me even decide what I wanted to do and study when I was in college.
So for any high school or college women that are trying to kind of figure their path out, sounds like co-oping it would be a highly recommended experience. What else would you as we had Claudia on earlier.
Claudia Freed.
Yeah, Claudia
CEO
Freed.
of EAL Green.
Yep. And she spoke a lot to developing women leaders and some of those early lessons learned. And what to do what you do now, how can other women follow in your footsteps? What beyond co-oping, what else would you suggest making the conversion into industry leadership?
I would suggest, right out of the gate, you just have to know that there are no barriers. It is anything you want to do, set your mind to it, you can do it. And it doesn't have to be a female only,
Right.
This is just in general. And again, being a competitive sports player, that if you wanted it, you had to work really hard, but, you could get that W at the end of the day. So that's my suggestion. I will tell you that I think a lot of times, too, it's just about understanding what's even out there and available.
Yes.
That a lot of, we had a women's in reverse luncheon yesterday, and just from last year to this year, it tripled in size.
Outstanding.
Which is amazing, yes. And so I think just knowing that there are actually jobs out there in supply chain for everyone.
Yeah.
Is good to know.
Yeah, we talked a little bit on the last episode you were on. You don't know what you don't know. That's one of my favorite phrases because it's so accurate. That lack of awareness, unfortunately, rears its head in so many different issues we face. Okay, so from your that first, you said right out of college, you went to work for J.B. Hunt in Chicago.
Yes.
Tough market, baptized by fire. Take us from there and kind of paint that journey into your current role.
Sure, yeah. So I started, dispatching truck drivers, and, I worked on the dedicated account side. So we had, set contracts with certain providers, and so my account was actually the Office Depot account.
Okay.
And so, I helped.
Sending lots
Can
of
we
trucks
say
to
that?
Florida.
Can we say that in the same breath with the Home Depot?
Well,
Yeah.
Just because it's depot doesn't
Yeah.
mean.
I'm just kidding.
There are lots of depots. There's room for depots everywhere.
So ironically, I worked there, and then Home Depot, the account we had for Home Depot for dedicated, needed some help, and so J.B. Hunt asked me to go run that, and so I ran the Home Depot business in Chicago for several years. And then Home Depot called me and said, do you want to come over to this side? So they called me and said, do you want to open up our first reverse logistics center?
Wow.
And I literally said, what is reverse logistics?
Did you really?
I did.
When was this?
Yeah.
Give us an idea.
This was in 2010.
Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't have known either.
Yeah.
Probably.
I know. I didn't know.
I would have called it returns generically, but I would have never thought of a. It's funny how that it works, isn't it? I would have never thought of a vocation.
Yeah.
Reverse logistics, right?
Yeah, and at the time, again, I was dealing with transportation and really the forward distribution side. And so, immediately was like, wow, this sounds interesting. And so, and the guy who called me also knew I was from Indiana, and that was where the facility was going to be.
Oh.
And so he was, hey, thought you might want to go home. And so, so I did.
Win-win.
And I loved working for JB Hunt. JB Hunt is a great company. And so it was a really hard decision, but I ended up leaving, and I went to start the facility, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I mean, you take for granted when you sit down at your desk every day that there is a desk there. There's an outlet.
Infrastructure, yeah.
Yes, there is a cell phone,
That's a good point.
And so,
it's a startup. You basically
it was starting
created a startup.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And so there were no lights in the warehouse. The day that I went to interview for the job, we drove around and picked a building. Like that was the interview.
The day you interviewed for
the day I interviewed.
What if you had picked the wrong building? Would you have not gotten the job?
Well, at least they didn't let me only pick it. It was a group decision.
Okay.
So I get one vote out of the 5.
Wow,
so.
That's heavy duty for an interview.
Yeah. Well, and again, I knew a lot of those folks because they were my customer.
Yes.
Being on the JB Hunt side of
What
things.
criteria did you use to pick I'm sorry to drill down on this,
No.
but what criteria did you use?
Well,
when you said, I think that's the one, what did you pick?
I kind of stuck to what I knew, and I was like, how many trailers are we going to get in a day? Like, so that I could correlate in my head how much space we needed. And
you could do that in your head.
Well,
being around, pretty close.
Yeah,
right?
being around logistics and warehousing. What I didn't take into consideration is that the product looks way different on the reverse side than it does on the forward side.
So that was the first of what now I believe the Home Depot has 3.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So that was the first one in Indiana.
Yes.
And after y'all stood that up successfully and learned those early lessons learned and what to do a lot more of, what not to do, and all that stuff, then how did you get to the Atlanta center? Did they say, hey, these folks have been there and done it? We're opening up number 2 or number 3 in the Atlanta area, which I think is in McDonough, south of Atlanta. Is that how that happened, to put the Cracker Jack team on that?
Yeah, we did. We actually, so I stayed in Indiana for 4 years, but we actually, about 8 months after opening the Indianapolis facility, opened up the McDonough facility.
Oh, that
it
fast.
was pretty quick.
Wow.
We did about a 4-month pilot, validated some things were working, and that we dotted all of our I's, crossed our T's, and then opened in 8 months later at McDonough, and then we went 2 months after that to Phoenix. So
did they make you pick the locations to keep your job?
I didn't. Thank goodness I didn't have to do that. Yes.
So your third facility's in or around Phoenix somewhere?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Handles probably everything west of the Rocky Mountains.
Exactly. So you can see, if you look at a map, we're pretty well aligned with the northern division versus south and the west.
Yeah.
So all 3 centers were opened, if my math is right, in 10 months?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Is that was that always part of the plan, or did the was it so successful out of the gate and the impact that they decided to accelerate, or anything you can share there?
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the plan. We, one of the biggest things that opening up our reverse space was doing was we were allowing and taking away tasking from our store associates and giving them time to go back onto the floor with customers. So a big piece of it was really trying to help our stores and take some complexity off of them.
Love it. So with that, I think that's a great segue to kind of diving more into because
I'm not ready to move on.
Well, I'm not either.
I know.
There's a lot that we could dive into here, but as I recall from the first time we interviewed you, kind of the successful migration of some of those duties is part of of the great ingredients that has gone into the success of the returns approach at the Home Depot. So maybe, Greg, let's dive into what her and her team do today.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm fascinated to understand the evolution of nothing to 3 facilities in did
10
you say
months?
10 months?
Yeah, my math's right.
And how that has evolved. So this I think we can use this as a segue, or at least he can't stop me from using it right now.
Helpless.
You had a vision of what the goal of this function was, taking the weight off the shoulders of the store associates. Has it evolved into something more? And give us a little bit of depth about what it is, how it is you have done things, and how you're doing things today.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially that was the goal, was to take some of that tasking out of stores. What we realized very quickly is how much we could take out of the stores and how much the stores really have to deal with things outside of just selling. There's a lot of things that come in that back room that, they don't know how to dispose of it.
Yeah.
The other piece that made it interesting for us was the evolution of e-commerce sales and the growth rate there, and so
you're fulfilling from store.
We were at the time, yeah. And so when we first started our facilities, we were not handling the returns from any of those e-commerce facilities, and so as time has went, we obviously are now taking all of those returns, and so that's changed quite a bit. And then if you think about just the type of product and the amount of flexibility you have to buy online, that also creates an interesting return aspect, because now you can have a lot of different products returned to the same center, even though it was purchased. There
is, there's such a breadth of product just in a store or on the site, and now I know that you have an even broader set of categories in the product. You're selling automotive goods now as well, and other related categories, right?
Absolutely.
So you just continue to make it more. They just continue to make it more complex for you.
You know what? It's fun. There's never a dull moment. I will tell you, in reverse logistics, that's for sure.
So as you have kind of evolved this operation, same facilities, have you reconfigured? Tell us a little bit about how your operations have changed.
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot, obviously, and as product mix changes, it's forced us to kind of relook at some of our layouts, some of our processes, and improve a lot of those things. We haven't done any kind of full retrofitting or anything like that. It is on our roadmap to do now that we know a little bit more. But what we're trying to do is align that with some of our strategies of our company on the forward side. Like you mentioned, we're going into a lot of different spaces we haven't before, and so we are trying to make sure we make the right improvements to match with what's coming our way soon.
Do you loop it back to category management or anything like that? Do you send them data or information back?
For the merchandising side?
Yeah, that can help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot. We have a whole team that is kind of like our liaison for vendors and our merchants, so that we can help them. And when we do like product line reviews and things like that, we can say, hey, this is, for whatever reason, this category may be, coming up higher in returns, or whatever the case may be.
Or the packaging is not conducive to remarketing or whatever.
Exactly.
Do you have those kind of discussions?
We do, absolutely.
We see that more and more, is why I ask.
Yeah. And and even just something as simple as, maybe the instructions aren't clear, the picture is off on what's...
Tony Sciarrotta, right?
Yes.
That's his thing, right, is let's try to... The best thing we can do to make reverse logistics efficient is to eliminate the need for in whatever way we can for so many returns and reverse logistics events, right?
So
it's good to hear. Anyway.
It is.
Yeah.
For most people in supply chain, certainly in retail, the season is that last few months of the year leading up into the holidays and all the gift buying and all that stuff. However, for the returns community and reverse community, January oftentimes can be the busiest, can be the season, right? So, when this airs, it'll be mid-February or later February. But here on the heels,
will still be
the pain will be fresh. So, but here on the heels of the month of January, and beyond some of you've already shared some of the lessons learned, I think in general. But what did January 2020? What were some of the lessons learned from this season of reverse?
This was actually an interesting year for us because we had quite a few returns happen, and because the season, I don't know if you realize, the season was compressed because we had one full less week between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so we had the same on the reverse side. Returns were coming in a much shorter window.
Right.
So that was a big lesson learned when we plan things. Obviously, you plan year over year. We look at rolling 12 and things like that. But we had never really looked from my side of things. I hadn't really ever thought of like, oh, what's the spacing between holidays and how much more that product will, kind of come your way in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah. You think about that a lot on the forward or the category management or store operations side, because you're trying to slam that stuff out the door. You're very conscious of that, but you don't understand how that impacts the reverse side of the business. I don't think anybody does, right?
I bet that will be one of the scenarios that is added to contingency planning, right?
Yes.
Moving forward.
Absolutely.
What else sticks out in your mind when you think of January 2020?
I would say, the team has done a great job. I'm very lucky to have a great team of associates that do an amazing job. And so what sticks out to me is just their dedication to getting the job done. And it's a hard time, coming out of the holidays for it to be your busiest time because you're in a lag. You're like, oh, I just, had a lot of food over the last couple of weeks. I've celebrated the new year, and we're gung-ho and asking them to, work some extra time. And so the big thing in 2020 January for me was just it's a sense of real appreciation for the associates and the hard work that they put in.
So let's I want to definitely get you to weigh in on global trends. But before we do, everyone probably listening to this podcast certainly hears the RLA event in full gear, right? The keynotes, the networking, the den of benchmarking and best practice sharing is alive and well. What value, clearly, I'm not sure if I met Tony Chirota, the leader of RLA, at the Home Depot event, or at one of the RLA events that Home Depot hosted, but clearly are big believers in what's taking place here. Why? What's the value that does the Home Depot team see in associations like RLA?
Yeah, I will tell you, a lot of it for us is also the sustainability and just kind of the economic footprint of what to do. And so one of our biggest things is, how do we get some of the folks here into recycling and e-waste? That's a big concern. And so how do we make sure we're disposing of things the right way? And so I think RLA helps bring a lot of those out, and a lot of the providers offer good solutions to those problems. Or, we mentioned you don't even think about seasonality sometimes and some of the shorter, hot times between holidays. Things like that happen here where these folks are really good about saying, hey, don't forget about this. And when you think about reverse logistics, or here's what we can offer you. The other thing I like about it here is it's a pretty open forum to also give feedback on, well, how can you help me do this? And people, a lot of the vendors here will go back and they will develop a solution for you.
Wow.
Because there's so many different products out there that you don't realize at some point are going to be returned.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so you said e-waste earlier. So for our listeners who don't understand, maybe.
Yep.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so just electronics in general and how do you dispose of them. It could be, there's a lot of things, whether it's not just your cell phone or, things like that, but anything even from lithium-ion batteries, particularly with Home Depot, everything is becoming battery operated, and so
Ego, right?
Yes,
the Ego brand.
Ego is one of our brands, yeah. And so, so same thing is just in general, how do we make sure we're disposing of it the right way? If you're selling it, how do I make sure we package it the right way, and things like that.
Yeah, that's good.
It is. It really is.
We talked to Sims Solutions, who deals with a lot of that type of waste.
Yes.
So it's funny he didn't call it e-waste, right? But
what we did
we
talk
need to universalize. As long as you're on the board, let's universalize that term.
We'll do.
We'll introduce you to Sean if you don't already know.
There we go. So let's go broader.
Sure.
And when you when you look out across the landscape that is today's end-to-end global supply chain, it's evolving by the minute. What one or two trends or topics or challenges or issues, whatever you want to call it, really stick out to you that you're tracking hour by hour?
Yeah, I will say, not to stick too much on the recycle train, but just circular economy in general is a big focus for us. And how do we do more? And how do we make sure that, our children's children will have, a good place to live. And so that's one of our biggest opportunities and challenges, I think. We have a really great program that we started, with shrink wrap, for example. And so all of the shrink wrap in our stores, along with our distribution center, our RLCs, distribution centers, we collect that shrink wrap and we send it back to Trex, who manufactures our plastic decking.
Right.
And so they actually melt it down and use it for brand new decking. So we keep all of that out of the landfill.
Do you get a discount for that?
So it's just that's kind of the definition of circular economy and so trying to find ways to do that more often. It gets very tricky. One thing you'll learn is that sometimes it's not necessarily profitable or cost prohibitive, right? So you've got to figure that out.
Yeah. But there seems to be so much more planning. In manufacturing, sometimes the problem, you're in react mode a lot, right? Or just in industry in general. And reacting with sustainability in mind is certainly one thing. You can make gains, but what I love hearing what you shared is proactively planning of where these things that we have to use as kind of part of industry. We always look for substitutes and alternatives that might be greener, right? But okay, if we've got to use them, how can we plan for them to be reused in a very positive way? Exactly. And clearly, what a great idea! What else when you scan the industry? Anything else stick out that you might be tracking more than others right now?
No, I don't think so. I think we're always keeping a pulse on the what e-commerce sales and how they grow at such a rapid rate and what that does from a return side of things, and how can we make sure that we are still offering different solutions to customers, deliver it directly to your house, but now we've got to figure out the reverse of that, right?
Yes.
So how do we make an overall customer experience better to include an easy way for you to return product if you weren't satisfied.
Yep.
So
well, clearly the Home Depot has been investing and reinvesting into its supply chain, which certainly benefits the retail experience. They've been on the Gartner top 25 supply chain list the last couple years. And we do a monthly series with
Mike Griswold from Gartner. Yeah, it's his
publisher.
It's his,
okay, or what?
He is in charge of it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how to position him.
But we'll get
Have
inside.
You ever met Mike?
No,
Griswold?
I haven't.
Oh,
so we love the
old-time retailer himself.
Okay.
So he's not just a theoretical analyst. He has lived it. So he worked for most recently a grocery store chain before he went to work for Gartner.
And as
knows his stuff.
With any rankings, it's great. It's so much fun to dissect them and see who's moving where. It's like football rankings or something, you know. So, but clearly, Home Depot gets it of how supply chain forward and reverse can have an outstanding impact on the consumer's experience. It's great to have you back.
Yeah,
because having toured RLCs, reverse logistics centers,
we call them actually repair and liquidation centers.
Repair and liquidation centers.
Yes.
And that's the three
still
centers
RLC.
we talked about, right?
Yes, still
so
RLC.
We're still RLC.
We're still RLC.
Still got that part right.
Yes.
Okay.
Beam.
But
Beam.
Yes. But to see that, and I don't want to share anything that you want to share, but to your point earlier you made, it coming back is so much different than how it goes out.
Yes.
And you've got to be absolutely committed to finding a way to salvaging that, whether it hits the shelves or goes back to the OEMs or whatever. It is a Herculean task, especially when you're the size of a Home Depot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is. I joke whenever I take folks to one of our facilities, I always say, like, it's like Christmas morning. You never know what you're going to get.
My kids would love that. They love these LOL dolls or something. It comes like in an egg, and you don't know what's in there, and that's the whole reason they want to buy them, so they can unwrap it at times in front of a camera.
Really?
It's the craziest thing.
It's like an unboxing video on
YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah. It's all the rage for these kids these days, at least for the 10-year-old and 8-year-old community. But you never know. You never know, and of course, you don't know what you'll be doing the rest of the day or rest of the week or what have you. Well, congratulations for making it through January 2020.
Yes.
And so love having you back on the show. Love hearing the Home Depot's continued journey to, being an industry leader when it comes to reverse logistics and returns, and appreciate your time. As busy as y'all are here today.
Yeah.
You've got a couple colleagues with you.
You've got other responsibilities, as it turns out.
I
right?
do.
Yeah.
I'm going on stage here in the next hour or two. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
What sneak peek of your what are you going to be talking about?
Nobody's going to hear it before you do it.
The whole board is going. We're doing a fireside chat, just talk a little bit, introduce ourselves, and
will there be
get
an
some
actual
Q&As.
fire? That's the question I have.
I do not know. There will be fiery topics.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh man, she is
You don't
quick.
Yes. We need a monthly series with Trish.
Dang, I'm telling
Yeah.
you, we should just call
No
it
Wildflowers
that.
Law.
Supply chain with Trish.
Yes.
Right?
That's the first movement to get my one name.
Yeah, that's right.
Going.
We're willing to help. We're
Thanks.
willing to do whatever we can.
Well, have a great fireside chat.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you very
carving
much.
time out.
Thanks.
Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. And we will have to have you back on as
Sure.
2020 continues to progress. We'll see how the year that was, maybe late at the end of the year.
Sure.
We've been talking with Trish Boehm with the Home Depot, Director of Operations, one of their reverse logistics and supply chain leaders. Fascinating. Having put your eyes on these RLCs, it is amazing. So do y'all do public tours of that with groups like RLA? Is that a ongoing effort?
It just depends. But RLA, we do have different committees and conventions and things like that we do.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's powerful.
absolutely.
Sorry for that false close there, but it is such a putting your eyes on that stuff changes your perception of returns.
I think I got to tell you, one of the things I take away from this is your drive and perseverance, your almost refusal to see a limitation. That is really encouraging. And I think as we were talking about, we used a little bit of this show to talk about encouraging females in supply chain. I really appreciate your perspective there. We hear that so often from high performers, from the leaders, female leaders in supply chain, that look, you can do it. You can do it, regardless of what where the ceiling is or who's got their hand on it. Yeah.
Once you get there, the ceiling raises, and you will get there again, and the ceiling will continue to raise.
I love that.
I do too.
That's perfect.
Good deal. Well, to our audience, and Trish, sit tight for just a second. We're going to wrap up on a couple upcoming events.
Yeah.
We always like inviting our audience to come check us out where we're going to be live. We love sitting down just like we're doing here now and picking the brain of folks out there making it happen and leading big things. So we're going to be next at Modex 2020. What's Modex?
It's a small supply chain show.
Just 35,000.
It's the biggest, 35,000 of your closest friends in supply chain. Materials handling, basically warehouses and conveyor systems set up in the Georgia World Congress Center in Atlanta, Georgia, March 9th through the 12th.
Yep.
Right? And free to attend unless you want to set up a materials handling facility.
True.
I bet they make you pay.
Small charge.
Yeah. And then, of course, on the 10th, Tuesday, March 10th, that is the Atlanta Supply Chain Awards. That's our little awards thing, along with the Metro Atlanta Chamber, CSCMP Atlanta Roundtable, and Apex Atlanta.
And I got to interject some pretty cool news.
Oh.
Since, and I was telling Trish this on the way in, the Home Depot is one of our premier sponsors.
That's right.
Of the 2020 Atlanta Supply Chain Awards.
That's right.
So they'll be part of, not only are they helping us celebrate the best of the best across the end-to-end supply chain community in Metro Atlanta, but they'll be there co-presenting awards with a crew, probably an A-team crew, like Trish and her colleagues. They're in person with us.
Hey, look, we say supply chain city sometimes a little tongue-in-cheek, but the truth is, I mean, I recognized it almost immediately when I moved to Atlanta in 1995. So, it's companies like Home Depot and other leaders in supply chain who are what we love to call you shippers, right? A shipper or a transportation company or small parcel carriers or technology companies. There is so much supply chain leadership and so much going on in Atlanta. It's really valuable, and I'm glad we're getting to celebrate that.
I am too, and it takes
so
support.
Thank you.
Yeah,
for whatever part you had in the sponsorship.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
whatever I could do to help.
See, it's good.
It takes support all levels, to do this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And we're very appreciative of our sponsorship. ModexShow.com for more information, and free registration at Modex, and AtlantaSupplyChainAwards.com, which is hosted by Modex, but it is its own event, and you've got to register there if you want to attend. And registration or nomination is still open for companies that want to vie for one of the awards through February 15th. All right, real quick, AIAG, the Automotive Industry Action Group. We have 2 events coming up.
Yeah.
Corporate Responsibility Summit in Michigan, April 28th and 29th. And what's the second event?
And then the second event is their Supply Chain Summit, June 9th, also in Michigan.
Yes. Can you believe that?
Thunk it?
And on the 10th, a little kind of a what'd you call it? Double secret event?
Yeah,
it's
our
called
double
episode.
secret event.
Wayne State University, which you may or may not be familiar with. Evidently, we've been hearing lots of good things about their supply chain program.
Yep.
We're going to be there meeting professors and students alike as a kind of a follow up to this Supply Chain Summit.
I hope they have those tasty little finger sandwiches.
And then finally, back in Atlanta, AME, which is the Association for Manufacturing Excellence, is bringing their 2020 Lean Summit back to Atlanta. May 4th through the 7th. Yep. We'll be there streaming live on day 1. Okay. Excellent. Do y'all have another big event next up on the calendar, or is it hourly or all the time? Or
I'll be at Modex.
Oh,
Will
fantastic!
you? Come by and see us.
Well, I'm a Colts fan, and Peyton Manning is speaking.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Right, so I'm not missing that day. That's for sure.
Well, Patrick Mahomes is still going to be at Disney World then.
That's true. Yeah, I did see. That's where he's going right away.
He's been and gone. This is how much I care about supply chain, Trish. I am missing the parade and celebration in Kansas City, where people started lining up at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Filling Union Station to celebrate 50 years, and here I am.
Here you are. Never a dull moment.
That's how much I care about supply chain.
That's right. First off, thanks to our guest again, Trish Boehm with the Home Depot. Big thanks to our audience for tuning in. Be sure to check out previous podcasts, upcoming events, other resources at supplychainnowradio.com. Subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, including
YouTube.
And stay tuned. On behalf of Greg White and Scott Luton, we'll continue our live coverage of the Reverse Logistics Association Conference and Expo in the coming hours. So lots of great interviews, much like this one. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk with you soon.